In this episode, featuring the 1976 Datsun 280Z, we're preparing for conversion. And so one of the first things we've done is remove the hood. This allows us to access everything that needs to be removed. You can see in front of the radiator here we have the air cleaner and the overflow reservoir for the radiator. So most of what is seen in this shot will be removed. All of the emissions related things, all the internal combustion related items are being removed. We're also going to raise the vehicle up, which will allow us to view the underside and to familiarize ourselves with the vehicle as a whole. Where is there access for routing, wiring? Are we going to have to route it inside the vehicle? Can it be routed on the outside, underneath? What are our options? So the other thing then will be we're going to remove some of the cosmetics in the rear of the vehicle and take a look what the steering area is there. We showed you a little shot in the previous video with the spare tire removed. We're going to remove the carpeting and that cover and everything to give us access to the rear. Well, we removed one strip that ran across this area right here, 5 bolts, and the carpet's able to come out. It's just basically lays in there. It's fitted. And so once it's removed, this is what you have. And this is just the hardboard that covers the spare tire well. Looks like a couple speakers have been added. And we'll see if we can retain those. Have no idea exactly where things are going to go at this point. But what we're going to do next is remove this hardboard. Basically 2 pieces held together with a hinge. We will take them out as one piece. We don't need to undo the hinge. Looks like there's only a few bolts that they got screw heads that hold this in place, and then there's 2 outer portions which we will probably leave in place. We're just going to remove the center section. All the components are bagged, labeled, or attached to the component they come from, so that things going back together goes quickly and easily, and we don't have to hunt and search for where's the nuts and bolts that went with that item. So here's the view with the that hardboard cover removed, and we have a couple cubby holes right here, 2 identical ones on both sides. Don't know what we'll do with those, if anything, at this point. We need to take a look at the bottom side, of course, and so that will be inspected, of course, once we have the fuel tank and exhaust out of the way. We'll have a better picture of the underside. So this is a shot of the rear of the car. It's up on ramps. And so what you can see is the body skirt here. And then this is the fuel tank. There's the straps for it. So you can see it's actually touched bottom a few places. We'll probably not want to come more than an inch down from that body skirt. We don't like things to show. The tank actually does show from the rear of the car, but because it's painted to blend in, it's not too terribly bad. So here's the differential, and here's the view up underneath. So we have fuel lines, so forth. We have fuel pump right there. It's actually above the rear suspension right here. That will go away just for weight reasons. All the hoses and stuff aren't needed. Here's the muffler. It's on the driver's side here. Kind of tucked up in there. And of course that runs down the length of the car. We'll jack up the front and take a look there also. So we may be able to run in some conduit basically the same path that this exhaust takes right on up. And of course, because we're not going to have heat issues, it'll be tucked up higher up against the body. And that'll be our electrical wiring from front to rear. Again, this is all possibilities. No decisions have been made at this point. We're just looking at all of the options. Now, the bottom side here is not nice and flat like it was on that Mercedes, for instance. We have the contours here for the spare tire well and some reinforcements. The strap for the fuel tank comes off the well. We'll probably be removing all that and be putting a battery frame, so the rigidity and everything back here actually doesn't decrease any. It'll be just as strong, if not stronger, than it is now. And it looks like we have quite a bit of depth here, so maintaining the same dimensions on the interior of the vehicle and having battery rack on the outside here without impeding any of the clearances looks doable. Of course, once we remove all these things, that's when we'll do our final measurements. We're just giving you an early preliminary view with regards to what you need to consider, what you need to kind of look at and say, hey, what's doable. And this allows us, it looks like, to run our wiring without having to go under the carpet, still stay in the middle of the vehicle, which is what is preferred, so that if the car's ever in an accident or anything, all your high voltage lines are in the center of the vehicle, not in an area where any first responders will be cutting through to get you out or something. So we prefer to go down the center of the vehicle, follow the tunnel, the hump, or another area that is away from the outer edges. Well, let's take a look under the front, see what that looks like from the bottom side. We've seen it from the top side. Let's take a look at it from the bottom side. You've heard me say in the past that I recommend getting a manual. Doesn't have to be the factory one, but one that's going to give you the schematic diagrams and other information that you may need to know for doing on the vehicle. It, will show you how to do disassembly and so forth, which can save time. Give you other information such as, the jacking points, so you know where you can safely place a jack and support the weight of the vehicle without doing any damage. So we find that having the manuals is of value. And another thing, for instance, on this vehicle, it's fuel injected. And so there's a section here on what the procedure is for bleeding the fuel system. So we can remove the pressure on the fuel system safely in a way that it was designed to be done. And all that information is right here for us in black and white. Also, we have all of our torque specs for, torquing things, going back, there's only so many things that we will need because of the system, propulsion system change we're making, but it's nice to have the information. And of course, you can see, really how much more complicated the vehicle was than it will be. All of the different vacuum and electrical and mechanical systems that were required for the internal combustion that all go away and is being replaced by 5 components. Remember, in a conversion there's 6 main components because we have an adapter coupler which we add to the mix versus a regular electric car. But you have your battery pack, your charger, your motor, your controller, and your DC to DC converter. So anyway, our wiring schematic is much simpler than this, but this is the rest of the car, of course, but a lot of it is pertains to the ignition system and the so ignition and emissions really are a lot of the electrical in these cars. So anyway, let's take a look underneath the front. One of the first things we observed with this vehicle, and that is rolling it around in the shop, is that it takes a lot of effort to push this one. It doesn't roll very easily, not like Carmen Ghia or Miata, and even more so than that Mercedes. But this is the reason. It's got pretty wide tires. Give you a little perspective. I can just barely reach all the way. So that's fairly wide tires. Quite a bit of rolling resistance, which isn't in your favor when it comes to range. So looking at the bottom side here, one of the first things I notice right here is the radiator drain. That'll be nice. Guess that's one of the first things we're going to want to do. We got to drain the radiator and remove it. You can see this engine was recently rebuilt. I mean, everything looks very new, very clean, new belts. Very nice. So, we can see that the transmission comes forward quite a ways, and it'd been nice if it was back another 3 inches or so. Let our motor go back a little further. But that's one of those things, what it is what it is. So there's, see if I can get some light on it. There's a motor mount. we'll be reusing those motor mounts, your shock mount. We won't change any of that. How we attach to it, you'll have to wait and see. But the steering on this is nice and low. Here's the gearbox and everything, real small. It looks like it's off center enough that the clearances and everything shouldn't be an issue. So yeah, looks like, and it's a thin cross member. You can see the steering here, and the gearbox is right here. Very small gearbox. Probably why it's hard to steer. And then this cross member, I'll put some light on it for you here. That's a very thin cross member, which is good. That means we'll have plenty of clearance. And so one of the things that we're going to do, I mean, look at the new components on this thing. I mean, that looks like an oil pump, and it's just nice and clean and fresh looking. Like I said, he said there's less than 2,000 miles on the rebuild, and I'll tell you what, I believe him. It is so clean. And not clean in that it looks like it's been cleaned. It looks like this is how it started off. So what we'll be doing is we'll be measuring where this transmission sits. So we're going to reference it, vertically, which we'll do from probably the hood latch down to the top of the bell housing, that dimension, and then left to right, and we'll find some common points to measure between. And so then we have our reference points. That way we make sure that this goes back in the exact same spot, because it's mounted in the rear. There's a rear mount, which is, common. That's the way these things are normally done. You have two engine mounts and you have one rear transmission mount. And that allows for movement. And so it's possible to get things off center. Well, we don't want to. We want that drive shaft and everything to be in the exact same alignment and everything that it is now. When we're finished, we want it to be exactly the same. So now's when you take those measurements. Before you remove anything, before you loosen anything up, now's the time to do that. And so that's what we're preparing to do. We're just looking at things, getting an overview of how everything looks from this other perspective down here, and then we'll take our measurements. So you can see what I'm saying here. A measurement from here down to the top of the bell housing. That's one important measurement. That sets the elevation of the transmission. And then we'll go from, like this bolt here out to the edge here. There's a nice good squared corner there. So there's the dimension. And probably similar on the other side. So here you can see there's the top of the bell housing to the top of the hood latch, right at 11 inches. So, we usually, we'll write down the information, and a lot of times we'll take a picture so we remember exactly where we measured from, to and from, so that you make sure you're replicating the exact same measurement. So underneath measuring for our transmission centering and so forth, as well as checking the length of the motor. So it's going to come from the bell housing through an adapter, and then we have the length of the motor. And to see, where's that is going to take us going forward. Is there going to be any length restrictions, so forth. All those things, we're trying to get some preliminary, measurements and information to make sure that we're not ordering not going to order the wrong things.